Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. There is a place in the darkest part of the forest where no one dares make a sound. A place where the shrill call of the crow is muted by the soft leaves of the blunt tree branches. In that forest there was a house. In that house dwell a starlit woodcutter and his 3 daughters. I would tell you that they were all very happy, that the town 10 miles off was not in famine, that all the daughters were dutiful and kind. But I never said this tale would be the happy sort. Our story begins in the winter, the long kind of winter that holds a world in an oblivion of icy winds and tea-colored skies. That winter has the power to imprison torrent streams and drive a stalwart woodcutter into town in search of food. 3 days, the woodcutter told his daughters with a furrowed brow. 3 days and I shall return to you with food. The youngest daughter, Anne, was not worried. She had only seen 7 winters and still thought the woods were beautiful and secretive. The second daughter, Meg, was pernicious and could only think of the years of hunger and privation her father had brought upon the family. The eldest daughter, Beth, was the wise one, and took this to be portents of some ill fate. She begged her father to stay in the modest cabin. However, when the sun was still rising the next day, the woodcutter left. The small cabin suddenly felt large and hollow to the young girls. On the first morning they played, spinning wool and trapping their fingers in the yarn. They sang long, forgotten songs and danced until they were warm in the cold, cold cabin. They sat and watched as the snow fell faster and thicker, covering up the last remnants of their father's footprints. The days slipped by faster than dirt through loosened fingers. When the second day came, the girls did chores, sweeping the cabin floors until they gleamed with the bristled broom that hung by the hearth. The 3 daughters remade the small beds that rested in the corner of the room and watched the birds that were oddly silent in the trees. The day was quiet and still, gone before they could look back upon it. When the 3rd day came, the girls waited. They watched from the small window for the shape of their father to appear from the woods. Anne tried to fill the silence with chatter, talking of how the woods suddenly called to her in a way they never had before. The 3rd day passed too quickly. "Where's father?" Anne asked a question that lingered on all 3 of their daughters' minds. 3 days, he had said, his eyes worried, his voice gentle. 3 days had come and passed, and where was their father? The question hummed and thrummed throughout the little cabin. The 4th day arrived, and with it came conflict. Their father had only left enough wood for 3 days. He had to take all he could to sell in town. The house was darker, and the cold bit mercilessly at the young girls. Meg shivered and brought the thin woolen blanket close to her shoulders. "One of us must go out and fetch some more wood, or surely we will all freeze." She spoke what every girl had been thinking, but what no one had the courage to say. Beth had her qualms when little Anne left the cabin and ventured out into the thick forest. Meg was fearful as well. If Anne did not return, then they were sure to freeze. The 2 remaining sisters watched as young Anne's figure disappeared into the silent and watchful forest. The hours slid by slower than wax off a candle. Meg tried to fill the silence with talk of how bright the birds' calls suddenly seemed. Darkness swept down upon the cabin, crushing the hope of Anne's safe return. With shaking fingers, Beth began to prepare for the woods, pulling on father's old pair of thick boots and stuffing dried grass in her gloves. Meg's eyes stared at her through the dark, bright, and cautious. Just as she buttoned up her coat, the small cabin door ripped open. Little Anna stood in a doorway, a bundle of wood jutting out of her coat. Beth embraced her, feeling relief course through her body. As Beth warmed Anne's hands and feet, Meg took the wood and started to heat the small room. On the 5th day, Anne was different. She did not frown as the other two girls did. She did not watch the window for her father. The youngest daughter sat on the floor humming a strange melody, expectantly watching the cabin door. She talked of the woods, how the trees seemed to stretch up and block the sky. She told of the most beautiful music she had heard there, haunting and hypnotizing. The music that had pierced her soul and left her frozen in hope of hearing more. Anne's eyes lit up when she whispered of the man she had seen playing that music, of how he had promised to come for her and keep her warm for eternity. Beth felt Anne's cheeks for fever, checked her tiny, frail wrist, and sent her to bed. The snow swirled outside the window, spinning secrets and deadly riddles in the dark. Beth dreamt of a man shrouded in darkness, who whispered kind, dangerous words in her ears. She awoke the next morning to find the cabin still, and Anne's perfectly made bed empty. All remnants of their younger sister gone with her. The morning came like an unwelcome guest, bright and cheerfully ignorant of what was truly happening. The sun shone on the snow outside, covering the woods in white crystallized blankets. Inside the cabin was frigid and dark. The last log had burned out, leaving wisps of smoke throughout the room. The two remaining girls hugged each other for warmth and felt tears freeze on their cheeks. Meg had to pry herself out of Beth's grasp to go out for more wood. She watched as Meg neared the clearing, turned back once to meet her gaze, before letting the woods swallow her whole. The birds watched as well before flying west, their wings beating madly until they were out of sight. Beth sat in the silent cabin, as far away from the window as she could be. Night came, and just as Beth was preparing for the woods, Meg returned, arms full of wood and a smile lighting her pale face. The eldest sister watched the flame dance and hiss from the hearth, filling the cabin with ill-favored warmth. On the seventh day, Meg curled into the pallet by the hearth, covering her ears while Beth sang a strange, haunted tune and waited by the door. Dusk covered the forest and the cabin. Meg still sat in the chair upright and eager. Beth focused on the fire, willing her heavy eyes to stay lifted, but the hearth's shifting flames tricked her to sleep. The eighth day arrived heavy and still. The last daughter sat in the cabin, tears spent and eyes weary. She carefully pulled on Meg's coat, straightened Anne's hat, and fastened Father's boots onto her little feet. She walked where the music called her, to the darkest part of the forest, and waited. Story number 2. Every so often when I go outside for a smoke, or just for fresh air, I never notice it the first time. Usually about the second or third glance down the old dirt road and into the woods, something will catch my eye. Once I try focusing on it, my vision suddenly becomes blurry, and when they clear, nothing is there. I feel like there's something watching me. I just get this strange feeling. I guess that something is literally hiding in a tree and just staring me down like I'm some hearty meal. It gets worse at night, and just a few hours before dusk. You know when it's dark, but you can still see a few inches in front of you without needing a flashlight. Yeah, that's always the worst. I mean, I know that there are deer and squirrels and chipmunks and all of that, but it's just that deep foreboding feeling that you get right when you start your first go of fear or Silent Hill. Sometimes it's fine, but others it's just deafening, like the calm before the storm. Even as I type this, I swear to God I just saw something dark run past my window. Now I'm kinda worried. Whatever is out there, in the deep foreboding woods behind my house, it's moving. I'm outside right now smoking a cigarette and I can hear it. It doesn't sound like a deer or anything, but I've heard that all too familiar sound before. Story number 3. My aunt and uncle lived up north a while back, and my uncle and then 16-year-old cousin went walking to check out the woods for places for my uncle to go back and deer hunt. My aunt went out to get them later, but they didn't show up. It had gotten dark quicker than my uncle had thought it would, and he couldn't find his way back. He called my aunt and told her to call the police if they didn't come out in the next few minutes, so she did. While the cops were then trying to find them, and my uncle trying to find his way back, some guy showed up and tried to lead them off in another direction. My uncle, a Navy veteran, was immediately on edge and refused to follow him, kept to himself between the guy and my cousin, afraid he would grab her and make off with her. Thankfully, the guy finally gave up and left as my uncle continued to refuse to cooperate with him, and he and my cousin made it safely out of the woods. Story number 4. I was a little young when this happened, so I don't really remember it. So this is the story my mom had told me. When I was 5 or 6 years old, my family and family of friends all went camping together one summer in New Hampshire. Each family had a camper and we all set up at one campsite. The campground had a playground, a lake nearby, and there was always something going on. One day, me and my friend Kelsey, who was around the same age, were playing outside at our campsite while our moms talked outside the camper. At some point, an older man came walking by our site. He seemed like a normal guy according to my mom, but then he started to walk up and start a conversation with our parents. He said he owns a campsite a little ways down the path, and that he has his own little playground in the backyard of his camper. He then said that me and my friend were allowed to come over any time we wanted and play at his campsite. My friend's mom was oblivious to the situation and told him that it was a very nice gesture and possibly we could go by later. My mom, on the other hand, who to say the very least has experience with creeps, shut him down, told him no and to go away. He walked away and my friend's mom started asking my mom why it was such a big deal. My mom told her that there is already a playground at the campground and that we are not allowed to go over there under any circumstances. She even went around to other campsites to warn people about this man and that everyone should stay away from him. Weeks pass, the camping trip is over, and everyone is home for the rest of the summer. My mom is doing things around the house. She receives a phone call from her friend from the trip. My mom's friend was freaking out and apologizing, telling her that she will never go against her judgment again and to turn on the news immediately. When my mom turns on the TV, there he is. Apparently this man had gone into a local pharmacy, tried to get some pictures developed. The pharmacy found hundreds of pictures of underage girls and child pornography, including his infant granddaughter. So creepy guy from the playground. I pray we don't meet again. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. I know it's only the first week of September, but Halloween is right around the corner. Be sure to send in your true Halloween experiences immediately. I want to make a huge video for Halloween this year, guys, so I need as many stories as I can. I'm thinking close to 2-hour Halloween special. Email me at thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I'll include the link to my email in the description box below as well. Stay sinful.